I think you have raised the expectation. There's nothing that I'm going to talk of today. Just going to introduce MDO. The way I look at it, MDO in a formal sense could be discussed in multiple ways. But way I look at it is any work which we do in practically any field cannot be done without considering multiple disciplines. Uh, Basically, my background is aeronautical engineering, aerospace, that kind of a background. And in aerospace, as some of you who are in uh, aerospace would know, that we need to learn about a lot of areas before we actually call ourselves as aerospace engineers. Of course, this is true for any other engineering also, like mechanical or electronics or whatnot. But more specifically for aerospace kind of an application, wherein everything has to tie down together in the best compromise manner to for the aircraft to actually fly, to be able to just fly. I'm not talking about any optimization or anything. I'm just talking about the bare feasibility of an aircraft to fly. So if you remember, Wright brothers, uh, way back in 1903. No, I'm not yet sharing the slides. I will share the slide. I thought I'll just give a very brief overview. So if you remember, the success of Wright brothers came because they were able to work out uh, a light enough engine, a good enough aerodynamics, understanding of flight mechanics and stability, and certainly structural weight. They were able to manage within some limits to get that. I forgot, some 58 seconds flight or something like that. Uh, Although there is a claim that in India, in Bombay, somebody had already flown much before that, but that is not well documented, and I have not read on that. But Wright brothers have been very, very, what do you call, extensively. Their work has been documented. So, I'm, the key there was how to get the best compromise done. So once a best compromise is done, your thing becomes, once a good compromise is done, your thing becomes feasible. And if you really want to compete, it has to be a best compromise. So that is where optimization comes into picture. And that's why multiple disciplines and optimization, so multidisciplinary design optimization. So that is the discussion of this workshop. So let me just share my screen. uh, and please feel free to interact. uh, you know I'm going to ask some very, very silly trivial questions in between. So my request is, as soon as possible, whether the answer is right or wrong, please keep on interacting, huh? So that way I will know that people are awake and I'm making sense. So it's actually more than anything else. It's a check that something what I'm talking is actually being useful. One second, just can you please confirm? Somebody, can you please open your, what is it called? Oh, again, I think it's not getting projected. But actually, it's getting projected, or yeah, it is there. It is there. Yes. Yes. Can you all see my screen? Please, you can unmute
Yes, sir.
yourself. Yeah, yeah. Please
Yes,
unmute
sir. Yes, sir. We
yourself, and
can see your
yeah,
screen.
yeah. Sure, sure. So okay, some title is really longish title. So we all, engineers are basically supposed to do analysis and design. If you ask me, design and analysis should be the way. Although today all of us have shifted to analysis and testing specialization so much, but key thing engineers were supposed to do was design. And there was always a conventional design methodology. uh, and engineering also has a and this methodology can be coupled with optimization to get engineering design optimization. And multidisciplinary design optimization is just an extension of design optimization. So uh, so first I'll thank Kharagpur team to who are doing this work every I think now in February was the first one, and this is the December next one. So that way, my whole aim of this talk is that if I can, you know, nudge you guys, just push you guys, at least one out of you people, if you can start looking at it MDO and start working on it, our tribe will start growing. There are just too few people in MDO. Uh, there are multiple reasons for it, and before we go ahead, let me just ask you: do you think MDO for engineering design is essential, desirable, or useless? Can people just respond? Or how many of you feel? Okay, please go ahead if somebody can say something.
So it's essential, I think.
Essential. Okay, don't say it because I'm putting a presentation. Uh, but can you just dwell on it? Why do you think it's essential?
So because if we go for designing process, then there comes some innovations, and for that you need to have some hit and trial things. Means you need to exercise some things. So I think it is necessary. Then only you can get the best output.
Okay, good. Anybody else would like to add something? So let me see how many people are there. I think there are something like 10, 12 people are there, isn't it? So can I request somebody else to say, Madam has been telling, Madam, what's your good name?
So Yulia Mitra.
Ah, Yulia Mitra. Yes, ma'am.
Ankit,
So
Ankit,
anybody else?
Ankit, I think is typing something. Maybe he should
Okay,
speak
okay.
up.
Oh, I've not seen that. Yes, maybe if you can all interact, it will be good. So desirable, essential. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I think this is the way we will interact. I'll keep my message on, and you can keep on typing. That way, it will save some time also. So, but believe me, I have been working in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center of ISRO for last almost 30 years. In April, it will be 30 years. Take it from me, 99.9% people feel that it is just not required. Okay. So believe me, once you come to a setup like that, you also may not feel, today is a lecture day, so so all of us, uh, first of all, we are a sample of the people who are interested in this. That's why, so we are a biased sample. Uh, but most people don't think it is essential. First of all, there are a lot of misconceptions with this. I will just touch upon few of them, and let us see uh, how we go about. Huh? So, so if you think it's useless and I can convince you that it is desirable, or if you think it is desirable and I can convince you that it is essential, we would have done our job of organizing. He has our trip. He has been talking to everybody over last so many months. Uh, so let me quote Eiler. He is one of the persons whose contributions are kind of uncomparable. So what view he has of optimization. So I like this, and I hope you'll also enjoy it. For since the fabric of the universe is most perfect and the work of a most wise creator, nothing at all takes place in the universe in which some rule of maximum or minimum does not appear. The you can take any situation. If my cup is sitting like this here, it is sitting in this position because its energy is minimum for this in the local, in the you know in the vicinity of the state variables close to this thing, isn't it? If it is like this, it tends to come back, correct? So energy is being minimized. So anything which you look at, it has a optimization built into it. So we are only trying to use the main principle which is there in the world. So let's start looking at it. I have quite a few things to talk about. So but they are more by way of motivation and by example of how a few of the cases we have used here and there. I would like to do it day in day out MDO, but take it from me, in the industry still, people would rather like to just take something from somewhere, reproduce it, and do it as quickly as possible. That gives them much more returns than doing things like this. So okay, so let's look at some motivation from not my area, some other area. I picked it up from various open resources. So let's look at fuel efficiency for commercial jet aircraft. You can see the carbon dioxide emissions over years have kept on going up, but average fuel burnt, if you see over the years, is actually reducing. You see, there's no great technology change which has occurred over these years, but all this improvement is primarily because of incremental improvements which could be done because we did enough high fidelity analysis and learned from that analysis, optimized our designs so that you know our consumptions kept on reducing. You see, world over is progressing unless there is a disruptive change. uh, Disruptive change, many times optimization doesn't help in disruptive changes, or it helps in exploring that. I will touch upon some of these things later. But even if you are not into something like uh, you know a disruptive design change business, even if you are into your conventional engineering, you would always want to be competing with your peers in the industry. uh, and the only way you can improve is by remain competitive is by improving, and optimization helps you. So it can be your bread and butter. Whether you are into die hard innovation scenario, or you are into a conventional routine industry scenario, things work. uh, Okay, so then of course something similar on someone cost was there. This red curve is the cost. Even though the cost, you see, went up substantially, all this could be offset because continuously the average fuel prices were coming down. So 30 years back we used to pay much more for our air travel than we are paying today. That is, one is because of the mass market. Second is also because of good efficiency of all the systems. Now, similarly, there are improvements in road vehicles. You can see here, fuel economy has kept on, improving. These all are improvements. 27. So some normalized units are there. Miles per gallon is the unit. So you see here, from 27.2, Honda has increased it to 30. Almost everybody who has done it. Uh, and you see, that's why today, the questions of, you know, they're still surviving because they are improving, they are reducing the pollution, they are reducing um, uh, fuel consumption, continually improving. Only very few exceptions are there. I'm actually surprised why Hyundai is on this side. I did not notice earlier. I have a Hyundai vehicle. I did not know they have not improved so much. So let's look at carbon emissions also. They have kind of improved everywhere, and same two culprits. But leave two of them. Rest all of them have improved on emissions. And this, I think, report is a 2020 report, a fairly recent report. Now let's come to my business of launch vehicles. So launch vehicles, if you note today, there is a disruption happening actually, and you please see that this is the cost in dollars per kg. Way back, Vanguard rocket in 1957 was spending something like 900,000 US dollars per kg. And today we are talking about what? Falcon Heavy coming to 1.4. Can you see these improvements? Of course, I won't say this is because of incremental improvements, but fundamentally, if you leave these two guys who are doing launch vehicle stage recovery, that is SpaceX is doing that. If you leave these two guys, all others are doing conventional rockets only, right? But there has been a drastic improvement over time. One of the you know So just to give you a little example, space shuttle, it is an engineering marvel. 1981 it came into operations, but please see, 61.7 thousand US dollars per kg is its charge for taking the payload to orbit, 1 kg payload to orbit. Uh, Now, why it is not in service anymore? One of the primary reasons is so costly. So, so in engineering, I think I don't need to stress it enough. It has to be. You have to be optimizing. You have to be, improving, and you have to do disruption. You can see here, Order 5 was the best. You see Saturn 5, then Long March is Chinese. Of course, we don't know whether how correct are these numbers. So there must be some Soyuz somewhere. Yeah, Soyuz 7.6. This was one of the most competitive fellows. Soyuz. But now from 7.6, people have come down to almost half, and people are talking about one order reduction uh, in the cost of taking 1 kg of payload to orbit. And so I'm sure these numbers are going to drop drastically. This shift has occurred because of some disruption. But hereafter, the 2.7 fellow going down substantially, a lot of it will happen from optimizing our systems. So this is the same thing put in graph. So you see the topper here, Vanguard fellow. Saturn 5 was very good rocket, and of course it's not there. Space shuttle, whichever I indicated, very high dollars per kg. And now we are talking about Falcon Heavy, and Falcon Heavy is this fellow, Falcon 9 is this fellow. Already after publishing of this Falcon 9 cost has come down. So a lot of things are happening all across the world. Okay, so now after giving you some motivation from day-to-day life, so let me talk about our areas. Can you please tell how many of you are from aerospace engineering? Maybe you can type in your chat box. Yes or no, we can say. I'll be able to hopefully see. Is something coming? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are, and I think
Yes,
I
yes.
can
Oh,
see.
yeah. I can see. Okay, I think this, message fellow doesn't come on the top. Yes, one person I can see. Most of people, two, Ankit. है ना? So something like three people. Others are this. But I'll try to make it, what do you call, general. I hope you'll be able to relate to that. Okay, so now let us look at this engineering design. Forget about what is this all big thing. So let's talk about a new design. Uh, Either we are talking about a new design or improvement in existing design. The first stage is always conceptualization. We do, we think what can we do different from others, by which we'll be able to improve the quality, improve the metrics of the product and make it more competitive. I hope all of you agree, isn't it? Now, coming to after you have done the conceptualization, you guys have sat down and brainstormed. Then what you do? Then you sit down and model the fellow. You create a mathematical model. Then you sit down and analyze. You could do your FE analysis. You could do your CFD. You could do your trajectory. You could do any amount of thing. And then some of the cases you sit down and validate, so that you should not come to know later that all your analysis was not okay because the experimental results do not match with your analysis. It could be because of modeling problem. It could be because of just poorly posed numerical problem. Once you have done this modeling, analysis, and validation, then you try to understand things. Okay, is it happening the way you wanted? The whatever guesswork you did during conceptualization, is it really happening that way? Then you sit down and remodel. This remodeling could be mathematical remodeling, or it could be reparameterization of your design space. Suppose you're talking about an aerofoil shape. You have taken some basis functions for defining the shape, but then you could actually sit down and change your parameterization. Or instead of using Euler equations, you could use Navier-Stokes equations to model it, because your results are not matching very well with experimental data, and then sit down and reanalyze. So this is a conventional process, and all of us understand that. It's nothing, you don't need to be a genius to do this. This is a common sense way of doing things. So let me just illustrate this with this example of some fields. So this is one of the first problems I had worked on in MBO. So I always like it, and it's a beautiful, readily available figure. So I keep on using that. This setup is called the design structure matrix, but forget about this. Let's look at this. So I work in aerodynamics, so you'll find always this aerodynamics is always on the top. And same is true with everybody. So when we were designing, when I went to an institute, I was teaching for some time, 5.5 years, in an institute called IIST. Then when we looked into aerospace curriculum there, it was full of, fabrication and, production and some n number of courses in production. I was very surprised because the way I was trained in aeronautical and aerospace engineering was it should have basically aerodynamics, trajectory, structures, and flight mechanics. Oh, sorry, flight mechanics is already covered here. Aerodynamics, trajectory, structures, the four pillars. Propulsion. In this particular one, propulsion is not there, but that is what there. But that was given very little importance, and only production was there. Then I came to know the person who was made responsible for making the syllabus was a production person. So that very similar is true for all of us. I am aerodynamics person, so you'll always find aerodynamics on the top. But these all are required somewhere. So what is that we were talking? Yes. So now, let's say there is a parameterization. That parameterization in aerospace, many times you need to first evaluate the forces and moments coming on the aircraft. So that is done by the aerodynamics discipline. You use these forces and moments into the equations of motion given by trajectory and try to analyze the configuration. Now, because of this trajectory, and suppose it is a very high speed trajectory, for example, this is for a vehicle coming from space, it is coming at something like 8 kilometers per second. So aerodynamic heating is very important. Aerodynamic heating is very important. In order to take care of this heating, you do a thermal protection system design. Otherwise, people inside will get roasted. So now, after the TPS design is done, you also need to do a structural design. And these two guys contribute to weight. Thermal protection system is also heavy. Structural weight is heavy. This fellow gives rise to a mass which has some distribution. So mass and distribution, this mass distribution leads to change in aerodynamics because the CG changes, and aerodynamics trim angle of attack changes, where it is coming at some angle of attack, it changes. That changes the aerodynamics, and mass is also changed. So now the structural mass is going to trajectory, TPS mass is going to trajectory. So my trajectory changes again heating changes, again TPS design changes, again structure design changes, again mass distribution changes. You can see this forward information transfer is happening through these blue lines, and the reverse information transfer is happening through these red lines. So moment you see these red lines, you can see there is a loop sitting. If there is no red line here, then it means you get this data from here to here and be done with aerodynamics. The job of aerodynamics fellow is over. Trajectory fellow is over, like that. If there is nothing on the left bottom. But we always see in most designs, these loops are there. So moment loops are there, you have to keep on doing it. And this is the source of all trouble. So let me, this is a little bit of experience which you all will get if you go to any industry or if you are already in industry. First time, it is great to do that. It is intellectually very rewarding. I need to learn, oh God, if my lift to drag ratio is such, my trajectory is getting influenced so much. It is such a pleasure to see the effect of one discipline being seen on the other, its influence on the third. So you really enjoy doing that for the first time. The second time, it feels little repetitive, and you feel that you are just adding only very little value. Now the value of CG has changed. So what is the big deal about it? The number has changed. Why that mass structure fellow has not given the correct value initially itself? You say, okay, doesn't matter, my program is ready, I will do it again. So these fellows can do it second time. Now, let me just give you a little, realistic thing. See, aerodynamics CFD running one job may take a day or so. Trajectory running takes 1 millisecond. But you know how much time it takes after this data has changed to run trajectory? It takes 2 hours or 3 hours for this person to communicate this to this trajectory fellow. Trajectory fellow will be sitting down on this data for next 1 week and then generating trajectory. Another 1 week aerodynamics heating fellow will be sitting on that data. The running time may be all 1 millisecond, but it takes such a long time for data communication to occur and that person to initiate the job, because he's not sitting idle, isn't it? He has 10 other jobs to do. So it takes a very long time for the cycle to occur. So it is very time consuming to transfer data between disciplines, and there are chances of non-concurrency. This person sent one file email to aerodynamic heating person, but he forgot about that email and he looked at the old data. So with that old data itself, he is computing. You see here, there are mistakes which are possible. Of course, all technology exists to take care of all these things, concurrency. But are we using it? Most of places, no. So uh, then the managers come in. Uh, See, managers get paid for not the best design. The engineers are the ones who can claim that my design was great, because I did such good work in terms of technical fidelity and whatnot. Managers want progress. Okay? They don't care that much, that the trajectory fellow has used a RK45 or Rangakuta 4. He doesn't care. They want progress. And as you go up and up, the top politician may demand, before this year, before my term is over, this vehicle should fly, so that I can put it in my manifesto for the next elections, right? Similar is true for CEOs and everybody. Actually, all managers have to do that. That is their job. Now, what happens is managers see a lot of time being taken in all this analysis, and this feedback is one thing which is, that is you are back to square one every time. So they say, forget about all that. They just fix the designs. They say this is good enough for my work. So non-optimal designs get frozen huh, when the system knowledge is quite inadequate, because you are in the first or second round of this thing only. So that becomes a big issue. So managers want progress, and the disciplinary people don't want to share anything with anybody else. They want to have knowledge. I want to say only I know how to do aerodynamic design. TPS fellow says, his code may be half a century old, but he would not like to, share anything. He may not have been born by the time this code was written, but he would not like to share this. And this is, everybody wants to be in their nice comfort zone, and so this is a problem. So basically, the overall system suffers. Only solution for all this is automated. If all this communication is happening in an automated manner with all the technology which is available, I think almost a decade or two back, all these technologies are available. If you automate whole of this process, the job is done. And you will see, once you automate it, this automatic process needs to be driven by somebody. That driver can be an optimizer. If that optimizer is driving this whole loop, then can you see that it's an MDO work? I hope I am able to communicate. Anybody would like to, give their comments on this, or share their experience? Anybody? I think because nobody is responding, I may have to request some names. So I see Dr. Manu Vora. Is it possible, sir, for you to just say something? You can unmute yourself so that I know, everybody is getting it.
I remember him leaving. Hold on, let me check.
Okay, okay, fine, no problems. Maybe, Mr. Nikhil or somebody, please volunteer. Otherwise, I'll have to take names. So, yeah.
Sir, I agree with whatever you are saying with respect to all the issues we have in manual multidisciplinary analysis. Actually, I don't have previous experience
That's okay. That's
working
okay.
on
But what is your
on
opinion on this? Anybody would like to share an opinion, because not everybody agrees on this. So if anybody has anything, yeah.
As far as my opinion is concerned, I agree with the issues that we may have with dealing with such multidisciplinary issues.
Anybody else would like to say anything? Please feel free, because the purpose of this thing, it should be a two-way rather than a one-way. So please feel free to interrupt me anytime. So I see some 19 people there. So it will be lovely if somebody can give their view, and it will be nice. So let me just.
Hello, may I speak with Anjan Sen?
Every time
Hi,
we are
so this
sharing.
is Akshay. I am from IIT Kharagpur. I received an letter from you regarding Alankar
One
Agarwal's
second, I think again
patent
it's
filing,
gone.
and I have to sign a document in which
Can you see my screen now?
I make the claim that we have developed the solver
No,
together.
isn't it?
So one is from
Wait a
Professor
minute.
Ravindra, one is
It
from
is
me,
there
and one
now.
is from the student Alankar. Is it okay if I
So
change
now,
the wording to include that I am a supervisor? So if I open that
yeah.
up,
Now let me just go to the next
what I
thing.
see is
So
the
if you
language is
automate the
that
whole thing, the
hold on,
advantage
let
is
it just open. Yeah, so
that
the
it
language is
allows
that I,
multiple
Dr. Akshay
design
Prakash,
iterations.
Department of Aerospace Engineering,
If you automate this whole thing,
state
and
that
it
I
allows
jointly
novel
created
designs
the
to be
original
explored.
literary
See,
work. So
novel
instead of
designs
saying I
require
jointly
all these
created,
iterations much more,
I
because you have
jointly
not really
created
looked into
in
it
supervisory
till now. So
capacity. Can I add that
you will
word,
need to
supervisory?
learn when you are doing. So, i- and also novel designs are the place where
Yes, yes,
optimization
yes,
actually
yes,
gives you the best advantage.
yes, that is
Then
fine. But I just
concurrency
want to
of data
mention that
can
I am
be
just the
assured,
supervisor. I have not written the
and
code. I want to
manpower
mention
is
it. I
free
don't
to
want
do
to claim it.
innovation and analyze. See, this is
So
basically routine task.
can I do that?
And if this whole thing is automated, the manpower is free. And
Huh.
basic idea is the machine should work and men should think. But it's easier said than done. It looks so
Yes,
logical to do
yes,
it, but
yes, yes,
hardly it gets done this way. So issues are, people
yes, yes,
feel that if this whole thing is automated, what is their work? So the credits will get lost, and it certainly they go beyond their comfort
huh.
zone, and
Okay, okay, I can
codes
add.
are running
And
in
secondly,
different platforms, and who's the
can I
owner of
sign
it?
it and
Nobody will
send
take
you an
responsibility.
email, or
They
do you
will
need a
say,
hard
I
copy?
don't know, you only ran the code. So the issues like this happen. So let me just share with
Yes,
you
yes,
one very
yes,
beautiful
yes.
thing. This is by Mr. Professor
Huh,
Maveris,
huh.
but this concept is pretty old.
Okay,
But I have picked it up from this curve.
okay,
So,
okay, okay,
so this is an
okay.
important.
Thank you.
This is interesting. You will enjoy it if you don't know it already. So on the y-axis is some percentage, 0 to 100%. On the x-axis is some time-like thing. So the concept is there. Sorry, the first stage is a conceptual design stage. Second is the preliminary design stage. Third is analysis and detailed design. Fourth is the prototype development, and fifth is redesign. So these are the phases. I think all of us can relate to it. We do conceptual design, then preliminary design, then detailed design, and then prototype development, and then only you bring it to the market and check, and then you sit down and redesign. So let us see what happens. Please concentrate on this curve 1. You can see here in the conceptual design phase, your knowledge, this is the knowledge curve, is pretty low. As you go through the conceptual design phase and preliminary design phase, your knowledge increases. And when you do the detailed design, the knowledge actually goes up significantly. And during prototype development, it kind of, you learn the game and you improve, keep on improving things. And then after redesign phase, you can say that you have got 90% of the knowledge. So now this is the typical thing which happens. So let us look at the second thing. Second thing is cost commitment. So please see, in the conceptual design phase, your knowledge is very small. But what about your cost commitment? If you have already fixed your design, can you see that almost your 40% of the cost is committed right here itself, because you have kind of fixed your way to do things in the conventional design, right? And by the time preliminary design is over, some 65-70% of cost is committed. And by the time detailed design is done, you've committed most of your cost. At that time, your knowledge levels are 40-50% level only. And thereafter, the cost commitment is not much. You have set up your plants, you have set up your jigs and fixtures. A lot of things are done. Now let us look at the freedom. This third curve is the freedom. You had at the start all freedom to do whatever you want. Because you have committed in the conceptual design phase itself, you have committed so many things, your design freedom has dropped. You can see this curve has dropped from 100% to 40-50%. And by the time the preliminary design phase is over, some 70% of design freedom is lost. You have only very little freedom. And by the end of the analysis, you have no freedom. You are stuck with whatever you did, whatever decisions you took earlier. So this is the conventional, and by the time you actually do a prototype, you've lost it. So either it will be successful or it will not be successful. And that is one reason why people go for just taking some old designs, because you know that they will work. But in case of a new design, it just may not work. So now let's look at what you would want it to happen. So okay, let us look at this knowledge, same one. What happened to this? Let's same look at one. You would want this curve actually to shift left. Why do you want it to shift left? In the conceptual design phase itself, you would want your understanding to grow. By the time preliminary design phase is over, you have not, your design, your knowledge should be much better. And in the end of the detailed analysis thing, you should be at least knowing 70-80% of your system. If you don't know it, then what is the purpose? So now, if you look at the cost, you would not like to commit all these costs in the beginning. You would like to push it to this curve. You would like to have hardly any cost commitment during conceptual design and preliminary design. You would like to start committing costs in the detailed design phase and actually do the key cost commitments much later in prototype development. And if you look at the freedom, you would like freedom to actually be much more. You don't want the freedom to fall down like this. You would want the freedom to be so high. Up to the analysis stage, you would like to have 70-80% of freedom available, design freedom available. I hope I'm able to communicate. So now, I think it is basic nature of humans that we want freedom as one goal. Whether it's a sentient beings or insentient things, we all want this. And this statement is given by none other than Swami Vivekananda. But this is valid in everything, including in design. So then, this whole idea is that these things, whatever we are doing in design should enable this. And MDO enables all this. So why do we say that we pose the problem as an optimization problem? What are the advantages? Can anybody say what are the advantages? Can you please unmute yourself and say, because if I come out of this presentation mode, unfortunately it takes time to come back. Can somebody say some guesses? What are the advantages of posing the design as an optimization problem? Can one by one somebody? Yeah, please go
More
ahead.
time to innovate.
More time to
Innovate. Come up with
yes, perfectly right. Yes, good, really good. Anybody else? Please let it be wrong. It doesn't matter, because at least I am not able to see who is speaking what, and I'm sure it doesn't matter. Even if it is wrong, we learn much more. Can others?
So more clarity in design and compactness.
Absolutely right. More clarity in design, and you said, madam, compactness.
Compactness.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last word.
Compact.
Compactness.
COM. Yeah.
Compact. Madam, I didn't catch it. Can you just elaborate? Because it must be something must be there.
COMPACT. Compactness.
No, I understood.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
compactness, how does it come? Oh, you're saying the volume of the product
Yeah.
becomes lower? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, what you're saying is, the penalty you have to pay becomes smaller. Yes. Anybody else?
So we can do permutation and combination of all the, you can say, parameters, all the process
yes.
parameters that influence.
Oh,
So we
yes, I think
can
that's a very, very
maximize one
important point.
thing, we
Yes.
can minimize other, like we can do such things
Very true, very true.
in
So
Absolutely correct.
parameter
iterative
tuning.
manner.
Parameter tuning you could do. Yes. Okay, good. Then please go ahead. These are all very, very good points. I never thought about few of
And
them.
we can do all these things in actually iterative manner, like in previous slide you said we can automate it.
Correct, correct, correct. Absolutely right. Okay. Anybody
So
else?
we can narrow down a wide range of parameters into a selected and a very narrow range of parameters so that we get the best optimized result.
Okay. Okay, good. Yes. Any other points? Okay. So these all points which you said are very valid, and somebody said that we'll be able to explore the design space very well, isn't it? Somebody say the parameter tuning can be done, which also is a way of saying that we can explore the design space well. Somebody said automation. Well, because you have automated it, things will happen. If you don't automate it, things will just not happen. You cannot motivate people to keep on doing these things. All these are very valid points, but there are some other valid points, some other points also. Uh, why pose it as a design optimization? Why pose the design problem itself as an optimization problem? So let's look at it. It helps us in designing. It helps us in deciding clearly what do you want. In fact, the clarity comes of what you want. If you know okay, can we discuss this point? This is very useful. Do we always know what do we want? Any comments on that? Sometimes what happens is the top boss may say, अरे यार एक गाड़ी अच्छी सी डिजाइन कर देना, please design one good car. And if the person is a business person who has no idea of engineering, his statement could be very loaded. He must have seen one vehicle somewhere and he has that vehicle in his mind, and he is saying that you please just 1 second. Kshitij, I am in a meeting. I'll call you later. Huh? Yeah. Then what do you call? What do you want itself is not very clear. Okay? Engineer spends 1 year doing something. At the end of the day, the big boss says, no, I did not want this. So that should be clear, isn't it? Suppose we are talking about a design of an aircraft. It has to be a 10-passenger aircraft, should be very well known and documented. Once it's a 10-engine aircraft, 10-passenger aircraft, what do you want? You ask the big boss. You want me to maximize the range where it flies? Or you want to, go there for the fastest? Or you want the most luxurious? Or you want it to be the most safe? Correct? What do you want? That clarity has to be there. I hope all of you appreciate that. And unless you say that, the engineer just may not know what is happening. So what do you want often is called an objective. That is the objective which you are trying to either maximize or minimize. You want to maximize the return on your investment. It's this thing. Or you want to maximize the novelty in your design. In a Disney world, novelty may be more important than maximizing the fuel efficiency of a particular vehicle. Under what restrictions? What are the restrictions? Please state that. If your restriction changes, my design changes. Those restrictions are talked in terms of constraints. Constraints can be many. If in a particular uh, if you want to go to a particular island and that island's runway's length is only this much, then that becomes a very, very important restriction, isn't it? It's a runway length constraint for you. What are you allowed to change? What is the freedom you have? What parameters you can change, what you cannot change? Okay? All of them become design variables. What are the ranges in which you are allowed to do all these changes? They are the design variables ranges. See, you can have a span of a wing from so many meters to so many meters. Your length of the car can be between this to this. The width of the car is allowed
Hello.
to vary between this to this. So these are called variable bounds. And there are some variables which are not allowed to be changed. Right? The examples can be many. For example, this is India. India, you can only have a right, passenger. The driver can sit only on the right. It is a variable, but it cannot be changed, isn't it? The second thing is, I already have a, gearbox available which I want to use. So around the gearbox only, you design the rest of my vehicle. I hope it's clear, isn't it? So those things we call it as fixed design parameters. So now, please see, all these blue things are common sense engineering things. All of them translate one to one into mathematical things which define the optimization problem. For those of you who have done optimization courses or who are working in optimization, they know objectives, constraints, design variables with their design variable bounds and the design parameters define the optimization completely. That's why I'll come to this last line. This first line, which is the last conclusion of this. If you define the problem as an optimization problem, it defines it completely. In fact, what you should do is between you and your big boss, you should make a minutes of meeting and get his signatures in original. What does he want? Under what restrictions? What he allowing us to change? What is the range in which he is allowing us to change, and what he does not want us to change? Let it be put down, and once after 1 year when you will come back, you should say this is the design I got against the things which were discussed and decided at earlier. It is complete. Now, the system, what are the advantages? The system should deliver the best possible performance. Okay? If you define these things unambiguously, the performance metrics become unambiguous. The range of an aircraft is known. Cost of an aircraft is known. The runway length is known. Everything is clearly. A good aircraft is not known. A good car, nobody knows. Right? It has to be something which has to be unambiguous. So performance metrics are quantitative and done. Engineers should insist on this. And of course, this should be done for your own good. Later, you are the person who is going to say that. So let's talk about an aircraft. It could be range, it could be endurance, it could be maneuverability, fuel consumption, cost, safety, reliability, a composite index of all of these fellows. And it should meet all constraints. How about constraints? These are often stated and implied design requirements. Okay, sorry, I mean, this is another point. Constraints, it has to meet. See, there are certain regulations which have to be met. They are called FAR regulations, those of you who are from aerospace. In road vehicles also, they are very well laid down rules. You have to meet them. In case of a crash, there has to be some, the person should not be, affected, or he should be affected to a minimum extent. Okay, now let's come to this thing. Not only those constraints whichever are mentioned and agreed upon, you also have to make sure that the stated and implied design requirements are met. See, finally, customer satisfaction is the key. You cannot have a very clerical, legal kind of a document. At end of the day, customer is not satisfied. So then all your effort is anyhow going to be waste, and your reputation may not be good. All whatever I said in the previous slide is important, but still common sense has to be there. Engineers have to make sure that whatever is not stated and whatever is implied also has to be met. And you should know, you should have good enough rapport and good enough communication to be able to, come to an agreement that whatever I am doing is reasonable. So please don't take it literally, but take it from me that the earlier thing also holds. And it should meet regulatory requirements, and it is governed very strictly in many areas. and we need it to be very reliable. Okay? Anything you do has to be reliable. So what is the reliability to do with? It should be safe under uncertainties. That is where the reliability comes. And it needs to be robust. Can somebody tell me what is the difference between reliability and robustness? Yeah, I am not expecting an correct answer. I am expecting only some thoughts, and thoughts can be as wrong as possible. No problems.
So
We will at least, yeah.
robustness means
And if you
working
know
in
the answer,
adverse.
please don't tell her, because then the whole fun will be spoiled. If you don't know the answer, please go ahead and tell. Yeah, please go ahead. If you don't,
So reliability in
yeah,
which
please go
we
ahead.
can rely. And
Okay.
robustness is working in adverse conditions.
Good, thank you. But it's not a good answer. It's not a right answer. But I'm looking for such answers. Those who exactly know the answer, we can discuss in the last. Anybody else?
Reliability is it can work at any conditions, whatever be the circumstances, for a long
Okay.
duration without any breakage. And robustness is its structure means it can sustain every condition. Means,
Okay. Okay. Good. Please go ahead.
There is
Anybody
a
else?
there is a written answer from Harish.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
can.
Can you please read it out? I don't want to
So,
go out of my
yeah, sure.
slides.
So it says reliability is under internal constraints, whereas robustness is external.
Okay. Good answers. But these are, as we will see, there is a very precise definition to all this. And until I read it myself, that time I did not know. So wherever the opportunity is, I share this. Anybody else would like to say anything? Or those of you who know it can say it. This is actually an oxymoron. Those who know it should not speak. But now is the time. If those who know it can tell it. Okay, I'll proceed then. Huh? So let's see. See, reliability is, there are certain uncertainties. One of the madams said, things are, uncertain things, under that also should work. That comes under reliability. So if the load on the structure goes up slightly more, if there is a aircraft is flying and there is some wind, there is the system, my design should work. If my analysis shows that my CL, that is the lift coefficient, has to be this, even if my analysis is marginally wrong, it should work, my design should work. So there are uncertainty. Let's say within 10% of my uncertainty of my coefficient, my design should work. So you define this level of uncertainty, and if you design with those uncertainties, your design will be reliable. But robust is slightly different. If my response, okay, my response to these uncertainties should be minimum. Okay. If there is if my lift coefficient is in error by 10%, but still my, aircraft's performance is almost the same, or it is varying only by 1% in terms of range, in terms of endurance, in terms of, specific fuel consumption and all that, right? Whatever I'm looking at, its variance is small. Under uncertainties, that is called robustness. And it is safe, it will work, is reliable. The product is reliable. I hope, is it clear, or anybody wants a... I'll show you through another example. So, okay, this slide I will come to little later. Okay, before going to a very, some illustration of that, I also want to clear one thing. Most people have a perception that if you optimize, the design may not be safe, isn't it? Have you heard somebody, no, I am not interested in optimization because, then I'll be losing one safety. But the reality is, if you do a design optimization with uncertainty, then you can formally show that it is safe, and still the performance is optimal under those uncertainties. Is this point clear? Can somebody say yes or no?
Yes,
Please
sir.
unmute yourself. Clear, isn't it?
Yes,
See,
sir.
you are accounting for uncertainty and making sure it is sure by design and not by guesswork. Okay, bhai, the bolt diameter required is 4 millimeter. Let me take 6 millimeter and go ahead. Okay, that's not the way. If you do it with uncertainty, you know your loads cannot vary more than 20% of this, and the corrosion can only be this much. Under all the uncertainties, if you are doing your design, you may well be able to use a 5 millimeter bolt instead of 4, and you may want to increase the thickness of the the flange by 20 microns more. That will give you much more benefit than the bolt diameter being higher, and the overall mass is still smaller. Can you see my point, whatever I'm saying? So that comes out of design optimization. So let me show you an illustration. So let's talk first about reliability. That is the work safe under uncertainties. Let us take some design variable 1 and some design variable 2. Okay? And now it has a design problem, let's say, has just 2 design variables. So what does it mean? That this point is the initial design. Are you all okay with me? Is it okay? Do you all understand this?
Yes, sir.
So it's a point in my design space. So this is my initial design. So now I start doing some optimization. Can you see that this result has changed? This result has changed. And on the z-axis, which I have not shown here, is the performance. The performance may be becoming better and better. Just one second. You can take it. Now, so now the design is varying like this, and it is becoming better and better. Can you see that? Now, let's say this is we'll forget about the sun side, and then let us come to this. So this star fellow is where we actually stop. Now, this is what typically is a constrained boundary. That is, it has become unsafe, and that's why I cannot just go beyond that. So now I have to respect this. It is becoming better and better, and it could have become even better had I gone further. But I stop here, and I call this as my optimal design under constraints. I hope it's clear, isn't it? But and now this region is called the infeasible design. Pardon? Pardon? And so this one is the best design because it is sitting on the. Can everybody mute, please? Those who are not speaking.
I think it's Rika Sharma whose mic is on. May I request Miss Sharma to mute her mic?
Okay, doesn't matter, no problems. So now let's say if we take this best design and now look at the uncertainty around that. If you take the uncertainty around that, you can draw some ellipse, isn't it? Things could be uncertain. Now, if you were to make sure that even under the worst perturbation, this constraint is not violated. Can you see this ellipse? We have shifted this blue ellipse to this yellow ellipse and pushed it this side. And pick up this fellow, this design fellow, which under uncertainties also does not violate the constraint. That is what you would call as the best design, which is reliable. So best reliable design. So is this point clear to everybody? Can you say yes or no, somebody?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's clear, isn't it? So
Yes,
even under uncertainties, you are not violating any of the constraint boundary. So constraint boundary could be that my stress on the material, structural material, is not going beyond its yield, divided by the factor of safety which you have already decided, isn't it? So like that. So now let me contrast it with robustness. So now let's look at again something very similar, but this time I'm taking only one design variable on the x-axis, and on the y-axis is the response. So now let's look at Okay, suppose my design variable were to change like this, and with that the response changes like this. So maybe we can say that, this can be a cost, let's say. So cost is actually coming down, then goes up, coming down, goes up, like that. Now, can somebody tell me which is the optimal design here? Can somebody tell which is the optimal design here? If the response is a cost and I'm talking about a cost minimization, I know this question is very trivial, but I want somebody to answer that.
Lower cost.
Lower cost, so which point?
So the first bottom point.
First bottom point, correct. So this is the optimal point. Everybody agrees? So this is the first optimal point. So we are putting that point here. Okay. Now this is the best design, right? This is one design variable. So this is the best design. You could also imagine this to be n-dimensional design variables. So again, that the hypersurface of response will have some minimum. So that minimum is the best design. So I am assuming that many of us don't know this. Please, those who know it, excuse me. Now let's say I take a variance in the design variable, right? If I take a variance in the design variable, can you see that this fellow response can vary from this point to this point up, including this point? So my variance in response can be this much. Is this point okay with everybody? Of course, the real life situation is not as simple as this, but conceptually this is okay. If there is a design variable, or it could actually be design load for all you matter. Okay? So if there is a variance, the response also varies. Now let's look at this point and contrast it with this point. Now I have the same variance as this red curve here, and because of this variance, the response is going to be different, right? Can you see this? This response is going to be between these two lines. Earlier, for this case, it was between these two lines. So can you see this blue curve? Of course, not a very well drawn curve. I have drawn it with hand, with mouse. So can you see this variance being smaller? Does everybody appreciate it?
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? Can you see that? This is called the best robust design. So the response variance becomes minimum. Uncertainties are the same. So that is the difference between the two. So ideally, one should first do an optimization exercise, then do a reliability-based optimization, then do a robustness-based optimization, and a reliability and robustness-based joint optimization. Actually, then only it's a complete redesign, complete optimization process. I hope, is this point clear to everybody? Anybody wants to raise any point here on any comment anybody would like to give? So I assume that everybody either has understood completely or not at all understood. Huh? So, okay. So at least at this stage, I hope all of you agree that the design optimization is at least desirable. See, because none of these things you can do unless you sit down and do an optimization. This looks so nice and simple for a single design variable. Suppose there are 25 design variables, you just cannot look at the design space. So, okay, I'll leave it. There are many examples we can talk about. Now, let's take a few questions before we start further. Suppose you were to buy a new car. Which car would you like to buy? Can we all start saying one by one? What kind of car would you like to purchase? What is the metric you would like to optimize? Can we start? Can we one by one everybody say it? Safety. Perfect. Okay.
Fuel
Next.
efficiency.
Budget.
Fuel efficiency. Budget. Oh yes, cost. Very, very important. Yes. Then
Mileage, sir.
mileage. Yes. Fuel efficiency, mileage. Okay. Please go ahead. There are many more. Okay, no more question. Anybody has written in chat? If somebody can
Yes,
just read
yes.
it out.
So,
Please go ahead.
comfort, top speed,
Comfort, top speed. Oh, excellent.
safe,
Yes.
safety, cost,
Yes.
emissions,
Emissions. Yes, emissions. I would
size.
like to say that size. Yes, I want to maximize my size, or maybe minimize. My garage size is already fixed. Right.
Running smooth.
Running smooth. Correct. Comfort.
Space,
Space.
space or
Inside space, you would
seats.
like to maximize. Yeah, yeah. Can you see that? How many objectives are there, right? Isn't it? Say one car only. And forget about making one. If you want to go and purchase one, that time itself you have all these questions in mind, isn't it? Can you all appreciate that? The cheapest car you want, the costliest car. Please take it from me. Our Ambani's wife is not caring about cheapest car. She may be actually looking at the costliest car in the world. Okay? Of course, you will not like to just throw away money, but costliest car which can buy the best amenities, the most comfortable car, the least comfortable car. I don't know why I have written that. Least comfortable car. I don't know why I wrote it. The smallest car, certainly possible. The largest car, certainly. Please take it from me. When I was to decide my car 15 years back, I had many of these constraints with me, but I wanted a most unique car, which is farthest off from the general cars which my friends have. The most efficient car, the safest car, the quietest car. There is something else also written. I don't know what it is. Now, I hope all of you agree, right?
Someone mentioned
Now-
ergonomics also.
Yes, it's
And
ergonomics.
aesthetics.
Very, very important.
Aesthetics.
Aesthetics, ergonomics should be, yes, absolutely right. And you should be able to respond the quickest in an accident or something like that. Isn't it? Any number of objectives can be there. So can you all please agree on one of them and let's decide which one we will go for. Anybody? Madam, I'm forgetting, I'm not seeing the names. Can you just say which one you would want? Madam who answered the first. Or anybody. I have only some very few minutes left, but I still want this to... Pardon?
Cost, sir.
Cost. You would like to make the cost, huh? Okay. You would like to purchase the cheapest one. Does everybody... in fact, you yourself, are you sure that you want the cheapest car? So I'll just give you a little background. The only reason Nano failed was it was the cheapest car. Because nobody wanted to buy it.
It's the most efficient car.
Yeah, madam, same thing will happen for that, if you pick up any one of these objectives, I would like to convince you or I'd like to put forward in front of you that, you may not like to get the best car in that class. Okay? So let's talk about the cheapest car. If I just don't have any car, I may first go in for cheapest car, but very soon I will realize that, I may not get the best, I may not be most comfortable driving it because I may feel that other people feel that I'm not able to afford higher cars. That's why I'm going for that. Do you all appreciate this?
Yes,
And
sir.
same is true for any objective you pick up. There could be something, the safest car. What is the point to have the car with girders everywhere around and it is the most fuel inefficient, but the safest? People will say this fellow is mad or something. Is he the prime minister of the country that he wants? Isn't it the safest one? See, we started a bit late. Can I take 15 more minutes? Now it is around 10:30.
Yeah, sure.
Huh?
Sure.
Because I've taken a bit longer time. The idea is to really convince you guys that use MDO. That's why.
Definitely. I'll just contact Professor KPS and let him know that we'll start 15 minutes late.
Yeah. Okay. So now it's okay. Everybody is okay with the arguments which we have given till now.
Yes, sir.
On
Yes,
this,
sir.
isn't it convincing, right? I personally had this, when I was choosing my car, or when you choose your, mobile, which we tend to buy every 2 years. So this brings to a problem that how many objectives? Is it one objective or more objectives? And take it from me, whatever little experience I have in optimization, I have never been able to find one problem where one objective is sufficient. It's always, I want the I want the cheapest car. Just now somebody said, some gentleman said, I want the cheapest car. I want cheapest car, no doubt. But I also want the best comfort.
Hello.
Are you all with me?
Good morning, sir.
I
Sir,
want the best comfort
you are up in
at the
10
least
minutes.
cost. Correct?
Okay, okay.
So this is my Nano, the cheapest car, right? Mrs. Ambani wants the highest comfort. She doesn't want the highest cost. She wants the highest comfort, right? Many of us are somewhere in between. I did not buy a Maruti 800 at that time, or Maruti that Alto, for the simple reason that no, it is at the bottom of the spectrum. That time Nano never used to be there. I bought a Centro because it was a good, comfortable car at a reasonable cost. It's another matter that 15 years back and today the cost is exactly the same, less than 4 lakhs. That time also we paid 4 lakhs. So it's okay, right? Please say yes or no. So now I am posing it into a mathematical problem. So I am talking both as minimization. Here it was, cost was to be minimized, comfort was to be maximized. So my target was here. I want the cheapest car which is having the best comfort, right? So now I'll go to the conventional optimization in which we typically pose all the problems as either minimization or maximization. So you could say this is my cost minimization and this is my minus of comfort minimization. So comfort maximization means minus of comfort being minimization. It's okay, right? Now let's look at some of the solutions. So this is my feasible design space. So it means I can actually create a car of a given cost and a given comfort level, and it's possible. All this G fellow, if you can see this G fellow, looks great. It has a reasonable cost and a reasonable this thing, but you cannot just make it. It is infeasible. Now let us look at this solution A. Can somebody tell, would you prefer A or would you prefer D? Can somebody talk about it, please?
A.
A. Why is it so?
The cost is minimized. At the same time, when you look at the D is having a costlier than A.
Yeah,
And
it is. Okay.
And the comfort remains the same, or you see
Yes.
negative.
Yes.
So we
So
can go.
the comfort is the same and cost is lower. So I would like to go for A as compared to D. Everybody is convinced about it? What about A and C? Same argument? My comfort is better. Minus of comfort, isn't it? Is better for A as compared to C at the same cost? Are all of you? Does I hope people don't know about multi-objective optimization. Is it? I'm assuming that, and I'm speaking all that. It's okay. Please say yes or no. Huh? So, and keep on interacting, please.
Yes,
So,
sir.
yeah, fine, isn't it? So now you are convinced that A is certainly better than D and C, correct? Now, can you please tell me between A and F, which one would you prefer? This is A, this is F. Which one would you prefer? Somebody has to speak out. Wrong answer is perfectly okay.
Someone has written, Harish has written F.
F you would prefer. Very good. So can Mr. Harish, if he can unmute himself and tell, it will be great. Or somebody else can argue on his behalf. F is better than A because it has a better comfort, isn't it? Right away, it's a better comfort. F is better, right? As compared to A in comfort. But what about cost? F is costlier than A, isn't it? In fact, if you don't mind, I'll shift this A and F to these two. Okay? so that I can make the arguments in slightly better way. See, between this fellow and this fellow, F1 is having a better comfort, but you have to pay more cost. F2 is larger for this fellow. Is it okay? Mr. Harish could actually be very well right. At only a marginal higher cost, he is preferring F. Just by paying 1% more cost, he is getting so much of benefit. But if you ask me from optimization point of view, A and F are just not, you cannot choose anything between A and F or E or any of these green fellows, because any two if you take, if one is better than the other objective, if F1 is better for the one, then for the other one the F2 is better. So all the solutions on this front are called the Pareto optimal solutions, and this set is called the Pareto optimal set of solutions, of designs. Is it fine? So among the whole design space, actually engineers can get this Pareto optimal set, and then choice whether you want the cheapest
sir, he
car,
will take 10 minutes
right?
more,
That is this
because
one,
we started 10
which
minutes.
is having the
So he will take
poorest.
10. Okay.
I'll go back to this. This is much easier.
Okay.
The cheapest car, which is having the poorest comfort, or the best car, which is the costliest, the most comfortable car, which is the costliest. That choice typically cannot be made by engineers. That choice is made by the MD of the company. He or she wants to position this in the market, a Mercedes-Benz or Nano or Santro or Honda some vehicle. Nobody would like to be in this region. Everybody would like to be on the Pareto front. So is it okay? Is it clear to everybody? So most problems are multi-objective, and you will find very soon when you do optimization MDO problem, you will find somebody says, "नहीं, मुझे सबसे अच्छी cost नहीं चाहिए. Your rocket should be having, let's say, the best payload mass." So like that. So we have to do something called the multi-objective optimization. So there are many ways of doing it. One of the easiest ways is you take F1 and F2 and take a weighted sum of the two. You take half the weightage of F1, half the weightage of F2, and then you create a composite index called W1 F1 plus W2 F2 with W1 plus W2 equal to 1, and then optimize this person, and wherever it becomes maximum, that is your optimum choice. Is it okay? So you can do that, or you can do in slightly different way. This is called a weighted sum approach, or you could do an epsilon constraint approach. In epsilon constraint approach, you do one thing very simple. You say, I'm only going to minimize my F2. So you are minimizing F2, and you are saying F1 has to be less than this value, right? So all this design space is infeasible. So you are left of this. So it means you will start from somewhere, and then you will somehow go and reach here, and you will get stuck here. So this is your minimization. Then you change your this constraint to this. Then you will get a next point, then next point, next point, next point, next point. Like this, you will get the whole Pareto front. In this one, that is the weighted sum approach, you change the set of the combination of W1, W2. So first you take 0.1, 0.9, then you take 0.2, 0.8, 0.5, 0.5, 0.9, 0.1. So like that, you will get many points here. But then if you get a non-convex Pareto front, you cannot reach these non-convex points in this approach, whereas in this approach, you can actually reach all points. But please note, these are n number of design optimization problems. So it's okay, isn't it? Now, this above approaches are actually single objective optimization problems with a do loop or a for loop. For those of you who do programming, you know do loop and for loops. And it does job quite well. It can also be done in a very parallel fashion, massively parallel. And issues, of course, related to parent algorithm remain, but it's good. But question is, can we get this full front together in one shot, this whole Pareto front? The answer is actually yes. this evolutionary algorithms like GA and all that allow you to do this. And there is a good choice as they are population based, and then they can give a population front per generation. This full front itself comes out as a solution, and they are very elegant. And I had a good fortune of working in this area for quite some time, and I really enjoy it. So what you do is basically uh, you rank the solutions. So what you do is first you do something called a non-dominated sorting. There's no time to discuss that, but you basically say, see, for example, this yellow fellow is dominated by this green fellow. Why? Because it is poor in F1 and F2 both. The value of F1 and F2 for this yellow fellow is larger than this fellow. So certainly this is better than this, isn't it? So I can eliminate this. Like this, actually you will find that all these solutions can be eliminated. In fact, this can be eliminated in in comparison with this also, because it has the same F2 value and poorer F1 value, because F1 is more here, isn't it? So this fellow dominates this fellow, correct? So all these are dominated solutions. So you try to eliminate all these dominated solutions in a something called a non-dominated sorting, and you end up with this front. So this front is a solution of all non-dominated solutions. Why? Because this fellow cannot dominate any one of them. If this function is, if F1 is better for this, then for this one F2 is better. So you cannot dominate. So now you call all these solutions as rank 1. All you eliminate them and then do the same sorting again. Make this as rank 2, rank 3, rank 4. And then you do a GA, genetic algorithms, which is going to be taught to you as part of this course. And that will give you a series of fronts. And then you would certainly prefer solutions which are having better rank than the ones which are having poorer ranks. Then you will find that your solutions or your population slowly and gradually marches towards the Pareto front, and you get the complete Pareto front together. Of course, not as simple as what I'm saying. There are little nuances here and there, and but they are very nice tricks. You do that, and you get a very lovely, well distributed front. Yeah. Now, I'm skipping so many things and saying there are hundreds of algorithms, but can you say that the last word has been said on the optimization algorithms? No, not really. In fact, there is a theorem which is called a no free lunch theorem, and that no free lunch theorem says for any algorithm, any elevated performance over one class of problems is offset by performance over another class. So it basically means there is no one optimization algorithm which can do these jobs very well. I may like genetic algorithms, but certainly the gradient based optimization is the fastest for smooth problems, for convex problems. So like that, any new algorithm you come up with, it will be good for a class or a large class of problems, but you'll find another algorithm which will be better for a niche area. So if you are in the business of developing new algorithms, this NFL theorem basically guarantees that you'll never be out of job. So we have already talked about, is a single discipline sufficient? So we have found it is not. So I'll just give you some two very simple examples in which we were trying to do launch vehicle stage recovery, and we had these parachutes. So we did a parachute optimization. Parachute itself was two-stage parachute, something called a drogue parachute and a main parachute. Then we had this grain, this rocket motors here. So it has a grain shape. We optimize the grain shape. We also ran trajectory. So you can see here, there is a parachute design thing in which aerodynamics and many other trajectory, some part is embedded in that. So this is one discipline. There are two instances of this discipline. Then there is a propulsion discipline. There is a trajectory discipline. All of them are, so you take the design variables from the system level optimizer into this drogue chute. This is the design variables. And these G's are called constraints, which will be very nicely taught to you after some time, because the final optimization problem is what? I want to minimize the mass of drogue plus the mass of main plus the mass of this small retro motors, plus something you need not worry about this. All this mass I need to minimize, and also I want to minimize the touchdown velocity. So when this is coming down and splashing on sea, I want to minimize this touchdown velocity. So these are my two objectives under many constraints. So that constraints are set. So drogue parachute, the load on the parachute or the maximum deceleration level due to parachutes should not exceed some amount. So that is a constraint violation you are giving back to the optimizer. Similarly, main parachute. These are main parachute design variables coming to this main parachute, and constraints are going back. These are some grain design variables X, and these are the constraints going back. Trajectory is giving you the touchdown velocity. You see which touchdown. So that has to be minimized. And then this total mass is getting added up here, and that becomes the first objective F1. And this whole mass goes into the optimizer. So I basically sit down and minimize this mass and minimize my touchdown velocity. So let me directly show you the Pareto optimal fronts. So on the x-axis is my mass, whichever I was trying to minimize. So I actually am looking for zero mass, and I want to reduce my touchdown speed, zero speed. Of course, nothing like that is possible, you know. So if I were to use, let's look at one of these fellows. Let's look at stage mass of, let's say 12,000 kg. So 12,000 kg is this topmost curve. If you see here, then you see here, if I want to reduce my touchdown speed, then I have to suffer higher mass, isn't it? All my valid design space is here in this region. That is the feasible design range. And these are my Pareto optimal set of solutions. All this region for that problem is infeasible. There's no combination of parachute, drogue parachute, main parachute, and retro mass which can give me any touchdown speed like this with this mass. It has to be minimum this, isn't it? Now some very good information comes. So this coloring is based on number of main parachutes. So I had shown you this parachute, there are number of main parachutes. I can vary them. So if I am interested in only up to 22 meters per second or 23 meters per second, my number of main parachutes can be identically zero. So I don't need any main parachute. A drogue parachute is sufficient. But then the drogue parachute size keeps on increasing here. At this speed, I need one. My optimal design needs green, that is one main parachute. Beyond this touchdown speed, that is below 15 meters per second, I need optimally black, that is two main parachutes. Below 10 meters per second, I need three. Below that, there is no solution. You see, 4 is not a solution at all. Then please start using retro. But when you start using retro motor, then you can go to green. You can go to one main parachute. I hope you are able to see. Actually, you can do inventions with this multi-objective optimization. It's so comfortable. So this R3 region is drogue plus main parachute plus retro. R2 region is drogue parachute plus main parachute only. R1 region is only drogue parachute. For want of time, I am not saying other things, but like this, lot of stuff is there. So now this is just one very small problem I have talked about. We have worked on many such problems, very complicated problems in which very high fidelity things are done. For example, this was a re-entry vehicle design, and this was extensive CFD simulations were done, in which we did many things like modified Newtonian method we used, perfect gas laminar, perfect gas turbulent, thermally perfect, equilibrium laminar, non-equilibrium laminar, whatnot. What I have touched is actually one atom of a of iceberg. I'm not saying tip of the iceberg. So it involves a lot of work, but returns are beautiful. So I think I will do one thing. I'll stop here, and I will take one or two questions, so that if somebody has any doubt, that is better to be answered. So one sample problem is what I've shown you, and I hope I'm able to convince you guys that MBO is a way to go. Please take it from me. None of this can be. You cannot copy it from anybody. You cannot very easily do this through parametric studies. You have to do it through. Well, I won't say have to. I would say it is much more efficient, much more easier to do it through an MDO process, right? So I think with this, I would like to say thank you. And if any question is there, I'll be very happy to answer if I know something. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll request organizers to please take over. So,
Hello.
yeah, Mr. Hari. Yes.
Yeah, this is Harish Kamath. Sir, I have
Yes,
one question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, you said something about feasible design space.
Yes.
On what basis we decide the feasible design space? Sir? Is there any?
Yeah, very, very, very valid question. Very, very valid question. Huh? So I'll go back to my, something which I talked about. You remember this curve? Correct?
Yes, sir.
We said this is a constraint boundary. Correct? Constraint boundary means what? In this region, our constraints are satisfied. My factor of safety is more than 2 in this region. Here, the stress is coming such that my factor of safety reduces below 2. I hope you're able to relate to this. So it means, for me, I'm not going to accept any design whose factor of safety is less than 2. Isn't it? So this is infeasible for me. This is feasible. This is a very trivial example I've given. So, you can make it multi-dimensional, this thing. So for example, if my re-entry vehicle is coming from the top and it's because of the heating, my back wall temperature has to be lower than some value. If it is violated, it's infeasible. If the G loads coming on the re-entry vehicle is more than 4G, the person sitting inside the re-entry vehicle cannot sustain that kind of a G loads. So that is infeasible for me. Any one of the constraints, if it is violated, I'll call it infeasible. Otherwise, it is feasible. Now, in the feasible design space, I'm looking for the best solution. So that best solution is the one with the least mass or best comfort, but meeting all constraints. So I hope it is clear, right?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, can you suggest the name of the book for the new learners for the multi-objectives, and if it possible for the case studies, available case studies?
Sure. I think case studies may be slightly difficult. Okay, I may have actually. We have, okay. First of all, I'll talk about some textbooks. So one of a pair of textbooks by Professor Kalyanmoy Dev. So he used to be working in IIT Kanpur. So he has 2 very good books. 1 minute. Let me see if I can show you that book. Just 1 second. I know I'm eating away 2 minutes into somebody's time, but can you see this? These 2 books. So one is
not visible, sir.
that's okay. I'll put it on the chat here. So these are first one is engineering optimization for engineering design is one book. It's a first level book. It's very well written. This is by Professor Kalyanmoy Dev. And second one is multi-objective optimization using evolutionary algorithms. This is also by Professor Kalyanmoy Dev. So I have read these 2 books. I like them a lot. I have also taken the course, attended a course when I was doing my PhD with Professor Kalyanmoy Dev. So I recommend these books for starting, and I will put the link in the chat box.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am eating too much of time into